$1.8 billion so-called anti-weaponization fund. It was going to compensate people who say the federal government weaponized the legal system against them. It's been blocked by the courts, met with opposition from Republicans
and Democrats
in Congress and Democrats.
Excuse me, mostly Democrats.
Mostly
some
Democrats and some Republicans.
Some. Very few Republicans.
Just to be very clear, are you backing off the fund completely, as your acting Attorney General Todd Blanche has said, or are you looking for another avenue to revive the fund?
Let me explain what the fund is. People have been hurt so badly by radical left lunatics that worked for the Biden administration and Sleepy Joe. They're vicious, they're violent, what they did to people. And of course, they went after me more than anybody else. They raided Mar-a-Lago and all the other things. But people have been badly hurt. They've committed suicide. They've lost their jobs. They've lost their families. They've lost their wives. They've lost everything. They've lost everything over a fake weaponization of government. Now,
so
let me just tell you.
are you looking for a way to revive it?
Well, look, if it was up to me, I'd pay them the kind of money that they deserve. People have been destroyed. Lives have been destroyed. Many suicides. Think of it. People have committed suicide because a bunch of thugs went after them. So, me, personally, I think the weaponization fund is a great idea. And so do many other Republicans. You have to get it approved. If they get it approved, that's great. If they don't get it approved, I'd be disappointed.
All right, we're going to motor through this.
But you have to understand, people have been destroyed by crooked politicians, and they should be reimbursed for that.
Do you think anyone who attacked police officers on January 6th should get taxpayer money?
I wouldn't be inclined to say so, but I have to see it. I can tell you this, 97% of those people, you look at them, the FBI or whoever it was, because you had a lot of crooked cops, you had dirty cops. Comey was a dirty cop.
Well,
a guy like Bolton was a dirty cop.
But there's no evidence.
Wait a minute. Oh, you think Comey was a straight cop?
People who pleaded guilty to assaulting police
officers. Comey was a dirty cop.
No,
they had FBI.
Assaulted police
listen
officers.
To me. They had FBI agents ushering them into the building. They had FBI go into the building. Those people walking around, they're looking, oh, isn't this nice? They weren't in. They were being ushered into the building.
Sir. There's no evidence.
You had a bunch of dirty cops, and frankly, what they did was weaponization of our government.
But sir, there's no evidence of that. More than 1,000 people.
No, there's none. You know what you do? Try looking at the tapes one time.
Would you take it off the table?
Look at the tapes one time.
But 172 people did plead guilty to assaulting police officers.
You know why they pled guilty?
Should they be exempt?
Because they told they were going to jail for 15 years if they didn't.
President Trump just walked out of the NBC and told Kristen Welker to her face, you're either crooked or you're stupid. That's not a tweet. That happened on Meet the Press on camera in front of millions. And instead of asking why a sitting president feels that way about their coverage, the media spent the next day acting like they were the victims. Meanwhile, California is still counting votes 5 days later, and 60 Minutes just fired Scott Pelley for calling out the same bias. And we're going to break this down and look at both sides, and then I'll give you my perspective. With no further ado, family, check this out.
The election was rigged. It was a dirty election. And it's happening again right now in California.
Presented evidence.
It's happening right now in California. Right now, it's look at what's happening in California.
To that?
It's
the
4
Republicans
days.
Are doing well in
California. No, they're not. They're dropping fast because it's a rigged election. Let me tell you, it's 4 days. And they aren't even close to coming up with it. You know why they're doing that? Because they're cheating on the election.
Do you have evidence to support that?
All I have to do is look. All I have to do is look.
That's not evidence.
And I listen. And I listen to people. And let's see what happens.
But, sir, that's not evidence.
Do you think it's appropriate?
That's how they count the votes in California.
Do you think it's appropriate that they have an election and 5 days later they're nowhere close to picking a winner?
State and local officials acknowledge they are slow. They're urging.
No, they're crooked.
They're urging the votes to be counted quickly. That's how they vote in California.
They're crooked, just like you're crooked. Your press is crooked, and Meet the Press is crooked.
To be fair, I'm not crooked, but let's
Really?
Let's
well,
continue.
You play right into their hands.
Let's continue.
You're either crooked or you're stupid. You play right into their hands with this rap. You know that these elections are rigged. Your network knows that they're rigged. You know that I won an election in a landslide, and I got 94% bad press.
But, Mr. President,
you know why I
you've
got
never
that?
presented
Because you have no
evidence.
credibility.
But you've never presented evidence that it was rigged. Let's keep talking about, I want to talk about Todd
You
Blanche.
have more evidence. There's more evidence than ever presented.
Let's talk
Your
about...
elections in this country, we're like a third world country. Your elections are crooked, and you're crooked, and Meet the Press is crooked, and so is ABC, and CBS, and CNN.
But, Mr. President...
You're one-sided, crooked networks. All right, let's call it quits, because I've had enough. Thank you, darling. Have a good time.
Mr. President, let's please. I traveled all the way to Wisconsin.
I've sat in the rain with you.
I know. I traveled all the way to
for an hour, on and off in the rain, and I've given you enough time. You ought to straighten out your press, because you know what?
Mr. President,
a country can never be great with a dishonest
Listen,
press.
we traveled all the way to Wisconsin for this interview. I spoke with President Trump on Saturday, and we both acknowledged the complications during the interview posed by the rain. He agreed to sit down with me for another Meet the Press interview.
So there you have it, folks. Now here's what actually happened. President Trump sat down with Kristen Welker for a pre-taped Meet the Press interview out in Wisconsin. And things got heated fast. She started pressing him on his claims about California's election process, you heard. And instead of backing down, he looked right at her and said, "You're either crooked or you're stupid." He didn't mince words, and he didn't apologize for it. Then he called NBC a one-sided crooked network and walked off the set before they were done. And that's not something you see every day from a sitting president. And I mean, I get why some people think it's unpresidential. I've heard folks say he should have just finished the interview and moved on. I should say that's a fair take if you only look at the surface, but family, the surface is exactly what the media wants you to stare at. Because if you look any deeper, you start asking questions they don't want to answer. They want you focused on the tone, so you never ask about the substance. And to be fair, if you believe the president should just answer every question calmly and move on, walking off looks like a temper tantrum. And I can see that perspective. I'm not here to tell you what to think, but think about it like this. If you were at your job and your supervisor kept asking you to explain a problem you already answered 3 times while ignoring the actual mistake on their end, you'll get frustrated too. You might not walk out, but you'll want to. And the difference is Trump has tens of millions of people watching who feel the exact same way about the press. They see reporters ask gotcha questions while real problems get ignored. And then those reporters act confused when nobody trusts them. And when you look at all of that, the gotcha questions land on the president. The real problems land on your community. And there you have it. The moment where the tension went public, and this is where the bigger conversation starts to come in, the media didn't respond by saying, you know what? Maybe we should look at why a president feels this way about how we cover elections and ask questions that millions of Americans are already asking. They responded by running segments about how Trump is mean to reporters, right? That's not journalism, family. If you're supposed to hold power accountable, you can't spend all your time crying because power talked back to you when you refuse to do your actual job. And think about how much backlash and public rhetoric when it comes to demonizing and belittling the president, let alone he is a man, right? He said it, 94% of the press actually talks about him negatively. He is a human at the end of the day. I mean, at a certain extent, at least he didn't say anything disrespectful and called it out her name. But you as a human being, if you constantly being tarnished or your reputation is being tarnished, I mean, eventually you poke the bear long enough, at least they're going to say something back to hold you accountable too and have a productive conversation and be objective across the board. But if you're going to have the conversation, the standard needs to be in truth on both sides. And I agree with the president. You cannot run a country being dishonorable or being dishonest. Now, here's where it gets interesting because California held its primary and days later, they're still counting ballots. That's not unusual for California, but it's unusual for most of the country. Most states wrap up election night or the next morning. California takes days, sometimes weeks, because of universal vote by mail, signature verification, a 7-day window for ballots to arrive, and cure periods where voters can fix mistakes on their envelopes after election day. The state says this is about accessibility and accuracy. And to be fair, that's a real argument. If you're going to let everyone vote by mail, you have to check signatures and you have to give people a chance to correct errors. I get that, and I appreciate the extra time if, you make a mistake on voting by mail. So I'm not telling you the process is evil. I'm telling you it's slow. And the people whose job is to ask about it have gone silent. And that silence is louder than any conspiracy theory they complain about. But here's the part that kills me. The media knows all of this and they still act like you're crazy for asking why it takes 5 days, right? I mean, look at this. Don't take my word for it. Election night batches in Los Angeles. Karen Bass, 38%. Spencer Pratt, 28%. Nithya Raman, 20%. New batch. 5 days after the election. Nithya Raman, 40%. Karen Bass, 33%. And Spencer Pratt, 18%. And keep in mind, as it says, only the top two advance to the next round, which is why the third place candidate suddenly surged. Look at that. Republican barely got any mail-in ballots, but suddenly the Democrats only got mail-in ballots, basically. I find it interesting, right? And it's worth a conversation is all I'm saying. And they call it a conspiracy theory, the media, before they ever even ask the election officials a follow-up question. If you run a small business and your books took 5 times longer to close than every competitor on the block, your customers would ask, what's going on? They wouldn't be called extremists for noticing. The press is supposed to be the customer in this scenario. But instead, they're acting like the accountant's defense attorney. And if the accountant keeps making errors, the defense attorney never asks for a new system. And this is where it doesn't add up for a lot of people, especially when those same reporters will camp outside a courthouse for a celebrity trial, but can't find a county clerk's office on a map. Think about it in simple terms. Most Americans understand that mail-in ballots need to be checked. What they don't understand is why the same journalist who will spend 6 months investigating a tweet won't spend 6 minutes asking why one state always needs a week to do what others do in a day. I mean, look at Florida in their election. They got it wrapped up in a day. And Florida is basically getting new citizens on a daily basis by the thousands from individuals fleeing Democratic states like New York and so forth. And it's not about being anti-vote by mail. It's about being pro-curiosity. And right now, that curiosity is missing. That missing curiosity is what makes people look at late night ballot drops and start wondering what else isn't being asked. And that brings us to Los Angeles, right? I showed you guys on election night, Spencer Pratt was already ahead in the mayor's race. People went to bed thinking the celebrity candidate might actually put it off. Then the late ballots start coming in and progressive Democrat Nithya Raman surged past him into the runoff. I mean, look at this. She walked off her campaign funeral in literal tears, and she thought she was losing. Mind you, as today of this recording, it is June 8th, Monday. This was 5 days ago. She was disappointed for the simple fact is she called it a loss until those ballots came in that you guys see 5 days later, and now she's surging amongst both candidates who were winning election night. That's not fair. That's not right. Election day is election day for a reason, right? But look at her.
I've been a candidate for something as long as you can remember, and you've had to live through it with me, and you've been so patient through all of it. Thank you. Karnan Kaveri, I hope you know that everything every person in this room is fighting for in this campaign has been about building a city that's worthy of you and every child in this city. I've been a candidate.
So there you have it. Days after the election, the lead flipped. Now, I'm not here to say that's fraud. The state says those are legitimate mail-in ballots being processed. And they might be right. California has a lot of late ballots because of the mail-in system and the cure periods. So a late shift isn't automatically illegal, but it's automatically suspicious when the press treats your suspicion like a crime, But I'm here to say that when a race changes direction days later after the news already called it, people are going to notice and are going to ask questions that deserve an answer instead of an insult. And that doesn't make you anti-democracy. It makes you a human being with eyes who watch the numbers move after they thought the game was over. And then there was the batch, right? Some media outlets reported an update that showed thousands of ballots with exactly 0 votes for Spencer Pratt. Social media lit up. Trump called it another stolen election. Now, to be fair, the LA Times and fact checkers came out and said it was a data relay lag, not an actual 0 vote batch. It was a mix up in how the numbers were reported, not the numbers themselves. And I should say that's important because if we run with every viral screenshot without checking, we become the same thing we criticize. We can't demand truth from the media and then ignore it when it doesn't fit our side. But here's the thing. The fact that the error even happened and that it looks so suspicious shows us how brittle the trust already is. You shouldn't need a fact checker to explain why 0 votes for a candidate in a big batch looks strange. It looks strange because it's strange. And the media's first instinct was to call people crazy for reacting instead of asking how the system let the error through in the first place. If the system is that easy to misread, maybe the system needs fixing, not the people reading it, because a system that breaks trust every cycle isn't a system that preserves democracy. Either way, the result is the same. A race flipped after election night. A batch looked fake even if it wasn't. And the press spent more time mocking voters for noticing than investigating the process that let the mistake happen from the start. And from my perspective, that's the real story, because it isn't about who won or lost. It's about who gets to ask questions without being called names. Because once that freedom is gone, it doesn't matter which party you're in. And there you have it, family, because Los Angeles just gave us the receipts. But it doesn't stop there, because this same week, CBS fired Scott Pelley. He isn't some rookie. He's been a flagship correspondent for that show for years. On 60 Minutes, he got into a public clash with the new leadership. He accused editor-in-chief Barry West and executive producer Nick Bilton of putting a thumb on the scale for Trump's version of events. And he said the leadership was no longer recognizable.
What was the feeling about that particular opening salvo to the team?
She, I am told, said something to the effect of, "Why do you think the country thinks you're biased?" But she didn't offer any kind of a metric. You know, what's your metric? Why do you think so? Do you have a poll? Is there market research? What are you talking about? Because we certainly didn't believe that.
What was the...
So there you have it, right? Then he walked, or I should say, they walked him out. Now, to be fair, CBS management says Pelley is bitter and wrong, and that the company is trying to modernize. That's their side, and it's fair to hear it. But here's where the irony gets thick. The media spends all day telling you that Trump is a threat to the free press, and then a legendary journalist gets fired for saying the company is too cozy with that same administration. You can't have it both ways. Either the press is independent or it's not. And when a guy like Pelley, who has covered presidents for decades, says the room feels rigged, you have to at least listen. I'm not saying he's right about every detail, but what I'm saying is this. Him being on the outside now, telling stories about bias, proves the walls aren't as clean as the press pretends. And this is where it gets deeper, family, because if 60 Minutes can push out Scott Pelley for complaining about bias, what happens to the younger reporter who notices the same thing but doesn't have his resume or his platform to fight back? What happens to the editor who gets told to soften a story? The machine eats its own, and then it tells you to trust it. That doesn't work anymore, family, because it hasn't worked for a long time. And the only way it starts working again is when viewers stop pretending they don't see it. So when you look at that, and the lesson is that the media is either crooked or they don't know their job. And either way, you can't outsource your thinking to them, right? So this is Scott Pelley, basically with his commencement address last year. The drama, the theatrics, the self-important preening and performative outrage. A lot of individuals are saying, as you guys see on the screen, that this is propaganda, critics say, right? So check this out.
But in this moment, this morning, our sacred rule of law is under attack. Journalism is under attack. Universities are under attack. Freedom of speech is under attack. And insidious fear is reaching through our schools, our businesses, our homes, and into our private thoughts. The fear to speak in America. Power can rewrite history with grotesque, false narratives. They can make criminals heroes and heroes criminals. Power can change the definition of the words we use to describe reality. Diversity is now described as illegal. Equity is to be shunned. Inclusion is a dirty word. This is an old playbook, my friends. There's nothing new in this.
So there you have it. The same test applies to any outlet that acts confused when you ask why votes take 5 days, or that fires a guy for pointing out bias, or that mocks you for noticing a batch that looks wrong. Think about it like this. He's saying that freedom of speech is basically being taken away. And when you look at that, maybe it comes off as if, oh, well, freedom of speech is being taken away for individuals who agree with you. And you can agree to disagree and have productive conversation. But at the end of the day, right, he's complaining about bias, but then in the same way, spewing rhetoric that fear mongering to the simple fact of trying to have individuals support his claim of freedom of speech being taken away. Real journalism just seeks the truth and seek answers for the American people and let them decide for what they may, but not to tell individuals what a premeditated narrative of what the attack on freedom of speech is. And you see how he threw in there, it makes heroes criminals, criminals heroes, and it makes heroes criminals, and it makes criminals heroes. And basically he's trying to say, you're calling the good evil. You're calling evil good, and you're calling good evil. But what could he be referring to, right? And you look in the comments, and this is what critics are saying, right? When you see this in the rants, a lot of individuals look at it like a personal attack towards our president, President Trump. And individuals are saying he was part of the power structure of prohibiting free speech, right? And they say, I tell my family each week, let's find out what that institutional government and big pharma want us to believe, right? And a lot of people are saying Pelly was never a journalist for a minute, always biased. So he comes off with the premeditated narrative already to tell individuals that freedom of speech is being attacked based on his standard of it. And like I say, journalism is just seeking the truth and let individuals decide. Which I like to do is show you guys the receipts and you think for your own. As always, we're just having a conversation. So if your neighbor keep telling you things that didn't add up, and every time you ask the question, they called you names, you'll stop asking them for directions. You wouldn't hate them. You just wouldn't trust them. But the press has earned that same skepticism, and we can say the same thing that individuals are feeling, as you seen in the comments we went through a little bit.
But in this moment,
from Scott Pelley, that's how they feel with the skepticism. They feel in regards of, okay, if I ask you a question and you call me names, it gives off skepticism, because it's like you just want me to agree with you. And you don't have to be angry to withhold your trust. You just have to pay attention. And peace and positivity isn't about ignoring problems. It's about refusing to let other people define what you're allowed to think. And as you see, as an example, I wanted to show you in his commencement speech last year, a lot of critics and a lot of people are basically saying, in a celebration, you are basically defining to these graduates who worked hard on what they're allowed to think on how the freedom of press is being attacked. And if anything, this should be encouragement for allowing them to go out there to continue to be productive. But you fearmonger them in a way based on your take of journalism and your narrative that you wanted to take along with the bias. You basically put your narrative in a way for individuals you want to hear what you want them to hear, so it can be biased in regards to them supporting you and go along to get along gang in regards of I want the people to say what I want them to say, and I want people to agree what I want them to agree with me on, and nobody can shut me up. And a lot of individuals feel like he took this time in a commencement speech where nobody could shut him up to be pushing the narrative for him to be having individuals who are favoring what he's saying. So from my perspective, and hopefully that makes sense, family, that's the life wisdom in all of this, right? It's about not letting other people define what you're allowed to think, but we can have a productive conversation and agree to disagree. Ask your questions, look at the clips, hear both sides, then arrive at your honest conclusion without needing a panel of experts to validate what you already saw. I won't tell you what to think. I'm not here to tell you that you're allowed to. And once that happens, nobody can sell you a story you didn't ask for. Whether it's Scott Pelley or any journalist, because they should just be showing you the facts and the receipts and putting it out there to inform you, which is my goal to do, because apparently you have some individuals not doing it, or some journalism or the mainstream media individuals feeling like are not doing it. So I just want to be that form of outlet to lead by example, to just tell you the facts and the receipts and let you, and the truth, and let you see it for yourself. And that's real power, family. Not the power to yell louder than the news, but to the power to change the channel in your own mind. The crooked or stupid test applies to more than just anchors. It's for anyone selling you a story without the receipts. Let me know what you think in the comments. Hit the like button, share the video, subscribe, and turn on your post notifications so you don't miss the next story the media tries to bury. Spread that peace, love, and positivity. Let the love supersede the hate, family. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.